Hi, John. Thank you so much for being here with me and accepting our invitation to share your story as a supervisor.
Yeah, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Good to be here.
John, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and your coaching background?
Sure.
How you got into coaching in the first?
Yeah, I mean, I've had quite a long career, but the last sort of big chunk of it has been all to do with people development. I was a trainer, learning and development consultant within a big organization in the UK. And as part of that, I got interested in people and how we tick, how we understand, how we develop. And yeah, always been fascinated by that. And I think from learning a little bit about how we are and how we learn, particularly in that job, that led me into the field of coaching and wanting to know more about moving from working with groups to working one-to-one. And it took me some time before I got into coaching, and I think I was doing it informally, like a lot of people, doing it informally for a long time before I forced myself to go and get a qualification and then studied through
When was
work,
that,
actually.
John? When was that? When did you start?
It wasn't, I was going to say it's quite late in my career. So it would be 2008, 9, 10, something like that. So a little while ago, but not long ago for me, but for many people, quite some time ago. Yeah, I'd been working as a trainer about 10 years or so. And then I got into coaching and really enjoyed the coaching, really fascinated by coaching. I was part of a big in-house team of people who would offer coaching. And as part of my training and learning and development, I was doing some coaching and some learning and development as well. So it was all related stuff that I loved.
And what type of coaching do you know? Did you study and did you practice?
Well, I suppose quite generically to start with, it would be people who are experiencing difficulty, either new managers stepping up into a new role. That was probably one of the most common, or people who are experiencing difficulties. And then some people who are trying out new things, wanting to widen their work perspective, get into new things completely. Lots of crossover with the therapeutic side of life as well, which I was starting to become interested in as well at that time with coaching, because I eventually became a counselor and psychotherapist. Around about the same time, I was interested in coaching as well. So I trained in coaching and trained as a therapist. So I did my degree in therapy around about the same time. So just couldn't get enough of it.
Interesting, very interesting. I'm so curious, so I'll ask a follow-up question
Yeah.
a bit later. But what brought you to supervision?
Supervision came for me I worked in a civil service, a big national organization. It was the National Health Service at the time here in the UK, and working as a coach and getting supervision as part of my work was quite normal, which was great. I would look for a supervisor and work with them, and it was quite straightforward. But what I recognized was, as I moved into doing more interesting work, I was finding out that others weren't getting supervision, and that was a big issue for them. So I had the opportunity to get trained as a supervisor before I really understood what it was early on. And I trained with a guy called Steve Page, who I knew his name from a book that was written. He wrote, Steve Page and Val Waskett wrote a book about supervision for counselors. And it gave a structure for supervision that helped me understand it. And I did some training with Steve He trained me and a handful of other people, and that hooked my interest in supervision.
Mm.
And then I was lucky enough to change jobs, and I became a supervisor for 150, 200 coaches working in the NHS as part of my work. So I was supervising every day, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, every day, pretty much
Wow.
for a long time. And I needed to know more. I thought the training I had was great, but I still had a thirst for more. And so that's how I managed to find ICCS and the program that
Mhm.
I got onto. Yeah.
So, John, I almost hear like three types of supervision, or I want to check
Mm,
with you
mm,
because within ICCS, we're talking about coaching supervision.
mm.
You mentioned supervision within counseling,
Yeah.
and I wondered whether the supervision within the national service
Hmm.
that you mentioned is that different.
No, not really. No,
Be supervisions
no.
different.
That was what
Is
I was
it?
getting was, yeah, I understand. I mean, when I trained as a counselor, we had, you have to have supervision regularly. I always have supervision every month for my counselling practice.
Mhm.
And that's quite separate. But for my coaching practice, when I was a coach, I was able to access coaching supervision, and it was usually people doing another job, nurses or other health workers who had been trained as coaches and then supervisors, and were happy to offer their time without charge to people who are learning and people who are working as coaches as well. But that didn't happen often enough, and hence my interest and drive to do more of it, really, and find out more. But so I've had lots and lots of supervision over the years, which has been really helpful to me.
And how do you, so if we think about the coaching supervision,
Mm,
um, how do you integrate it in your
mm,
work, having in mind that you're a counselor, trained
yeah,
therapist,
yeah,
plus a coach?
yeah. It's fascinating, and I spent years actually wrestling with. I must keep it separate. I must keep counselling and
Mm,
coaching and supervision practice very separate. Those two,
yeah.
the sort of psychotherapy world and the coaching world, keep them separate. But I think the more I learned that I'm not able to separate these things out. I am me, and I bring all of me into my work, whether I'm working with a therapy client or a coaching client or a supervision client. And I integrate all of those things together and access them at the point of meeting the client. But it's the way I do it, the way I suppose I control it or keep the reins on it is what I'm thinking about, what I'm curious about, what I'm asking about. Is it in the benefit of the client? And if it is, then okay, let's talk about that. Let's go there and find out and be curious and be interested. Yeah.
I think this will be so helpful for a lot of listeners because we do have a lot of students who have a
Mm.
counseling or
Yeah.
a therapy background or psychotherapy background who
Mm.
probably will go through the same
Sure.
process. Do I
Mm.
separate them? Do I keep them? I
Mm.
integrate them?
Yeah. 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 I certainly had that problem in my mind and thought it was a problem when I was working as a counselor and when I was working as a coach and working as a supervisor as well. Before the ICCS program, to try and boundary them, keep them separate. But what I've realized is it's almost impossible to do that anyway, because the knowledge and the experience you bring when you meet the client is one, and you draw on it from whichever perspective you find yourself sitting anyway. What you need to recognize is it in the benefit of the client, or am I just being nosy, interested? Is it for me or is it for them? And I need to decide that at the moment. And sometimes I will say, sometimes I will say to clients, look, there's a question from my therapy work that I'm really keen to ask you, but I want to check that out first with you. How does that feel? and I'll
Mhm.
sort of recontract in the moment, one way or the other. And if I'm in therapy, I might say to somebody, I've got a coaching question in mind for this issue that's coming up, and I'm wondering if that would be okay for you.
Mhm. So asking for permission.
But yeah,
It's okay for me to go in this area
that's
that's
right.
normally part of the process.
Yeah, that's right.
Wonderful. And John, having in mind that you trained as a supervisor
Mm.
before coming to ICCS, and
Yeah.
um, how what did ICCS give you in addition to what you
Mm,
already known, and what value did it bring to you?
mm.
Because we do have students who haven't formally trained as supervisors, but
Yeah.
practice
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
supervision
yeah.
in some shape or form informally.
Mm. And I think th there was the 2 courses I've done, with the ICCS and before that are quite different in that one was a really short course. It was really just an introduction
Mhm.
to supervision, the principles of, the main theory,
Mhm.
the shift in perspective between delivering for a coach and delivering to a coach from a supervision perspective. I got that from the initial training, but going into ICCS, wow, it's like walking into a library full of new ways of working, and all of the theory that actually I was really familiar with from the therapy world. Lots and lots of things. There's huge overlap of theoretical background between the two worlds of counselling and coaching, supervision, and that was really reassuring. But the breadth of work from ICCS that I got was so, I don't know, I felt really firm, like a firm foundation is being built here on for coaching supervision. So I feel really confident now, knowing I've got a real grasp of what supervision is, um, where I am
Mm.
in those relationships with as a supervisor with a supervisee, and it was very complete. There's always more to learn, of course
Mhm.
there is, but it was, and there's lots of reading. I know lots of people I come across on the program say, oh, there's so much reading, but it was good reading, and I learned so much from that reading as well. Um,
Mm.
so I think it's a really, the difference being ICCS is really complete. Um, there, there's I can't sort of be positive enough about it. The tutors are great because they offer difference in the way that they deliver, the subjects that they cover, um, and it just kept my interest going. I was absolutely fascinated throughout. I really enjoyed that process. And it was awful at the end when you wave goodbye to your fellow supervisor colleagues who've been on the program with you and go their separate ways. But that's why it's so great to link back up with them again when we go into supervision circle with B and or other events that are online as well. It's great to do that and to say hi to people I've not seen for a while. Really good.
It really comes across, John, how what an impactful experience you've had
Yeah,
with
yeah.
ICCS, despite the knowledge
Mm,
you had before. And in terms of were there any aspects that you found challenging
mm.
within the course?
Going through the program, I mean, it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment, you know. Um, there's lots of time that you need to put aside, not just for tuning into the tutored sessions and doing, your own practice and logging it, and but the reading as well. It can be a challenge for some. Finding the time to do that, but I sort of always did and enjoyed that, and recognized that I didn't need to read every word of every page of every piece of reading. It was really, okay, what's this saying to me? What am I learning from this piece of text, this approach, this theory? What is it trying to teach me? And understanding that and taking that and seeing how I could integrate that into what I knew already, and sometimes going, really, I'm not sure about this. This is a bit of a challenge for me. This seems quite different for me. And some of those things were more challenging than others. Different perspectives altogether.
Mm.
Yeah.
And John, if we focus slightly on
Mm.
a different angle,
Yeah, sure.
in terms of the clients, who are
Mm.
the clients that you're supervising at the moment?
The ones that I'm like I've said to you, I'm towards the end of my career at the moment, so I'm winding down. So I've only got a handful of clients left, and mainly they're related to my old work. So in the healthcare sector, people who are still working as coaches when they have the time, but we meet, sort of infrequently now, and it's mainly, and there's probably I've only probably got about three, five, 3 to 5 people I'm seeing at the moment. But it's usually healthcare sector, and 1 or 2 private maybe as well, still going, who find me through word of mouth often, or LinkedIn or wherever, who approach me. But it's they've been quite long-term relationships as well. They just kept going over the period of time, probably years, some of them. Yeah.
Because you qualified as a supervisor in
Mm.
2022.
That's right. With ICCS, I did. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I did
Yes.
that then. And, like I say, I'd done the other sort of introductory level, really, the other qualifications over the preceding 10 years or so,
Mm-hmm.
and been working like that. Yeah.
And John, in terms of the clients that you supervised,
Mm.
that are still
Yeah.
supervising, what kind of challenges do they bring to supervision?
It's if there's a huge variety, but they're rarely that different. And they certainly, I always thought, I had this misapprehension that the more senior in an organization the person is that you work with, the more difficult the problems will be. And actually, I've found the opposite almost, is the more senior the person is, the more simple the issues often are. They're often relationship issues or self-doubt, or imposter syndromes, or imposter sort of types of thoughts and feelings that they're dealing with. Very sort of straightforward stuff. It doesn't seem to change, and it hasn't really changed that much over the years either, with the kind of things that are presented. Difficult issues are presented because they're really, really difficult. Sometimes it's really hard to think of all of the implications for all of the customers or stakeholders within the problem. And sometimes these decisions that clients have, there isn't a one way, and it's really mitigating all of the different things and making a decision and being okay with it that makes the difficulty. For them in the short term, in the long term, they recognize that is the only way through.
So true. So true. And I so resonate with as a supervisor and as a client,
Oh yeah,
as a
yeah.
supervision client as well.
And when they get it wrong, recognizing that and learning from it is the key. Yeah, so let's turn this into learning. How can you hang on to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's why this supervision space can be such a vulnerable
Mm. Yeah.
space and is so important.
Mm.
The space that we offer as supervisors and we
Yeah.
co-create, but still for it to be a safe space for
Absolutely. Yeah.
open up about things that maybe they haven't shared with anybody
Yeah.
or haven't even wanted to recognize themselves before.
Mm. Yeah. Completely. Yeah. I think, well, as a supervisor, I'm often coming back to the contract what's in the contract with your client, what have you agreed to do. But the contract that I have with the supervisee as well around confidentiality and the level of challenge and gauging what sort of depth our relationships got to, what's my self-awareness like, all of the things that are in our supervision competencies, to be honest,
Yeah.
around those different things.
Yes. And John, what do you love about supervision and being a supervisor?
I probably say this all the time in my own supervision, and that's particularly group supervision, is because I love working with coaches and supervisors. They're like the best group of people to be working with. They really are. I know that's really, really biased, but the people who come, the people who are coaches and supervisors, have got a real interest in who we are as people and how we operate and why, and they're being curious about themselves and others, and they often want to help others navigate better, understand themselves better. And I think just coming into that space, that's what excites me. It's the same, to an extent, the same with therapy as well, but I think there's something different about the supervision space. I think there's sort of almost a longer viewpoint, a longer field of vision. You can see further ahead somehow with supervision than you can do with some of the other work. So it just feels, because we're reflecting on practice overall with individuals often, like, how is it going? What's going on for you? So
Yeah.
it's really good.
Yeah, so beautifully put. I do feel the same, that the supervision space is such a different space.
Mm,
And I
mm,
think part of it is exactly what you said about this the curiosity, the real desire,
mm,
thirst for
mm.
coaches to grow, to
Yeah,
learn, make an impact
yeah,
for others, and it
yeah,
feels so home. It
yeah,
really feels like home.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And it's a great place for them to, I hope, great place for them to be challenging, to question, to query, to be curious about themselves as well, to test things out. I might say in sessions, well, ask me. You're curious about, ask me. See how I react. If you don't, they're talking about a client that they have challenges with. Ask me, how might I reply? What kind of formal words are you going to use? Have a think. Yeah, it's just just
playful
try.
approach as well.
Exactly. Have some fun with it. Have some fun with it, by all means.
How has becoming a coaching supervisor shaped you as a person, as a coach?
Um, I think it has it's certainly changed the way I coach. I feel a much better coach as a result of becoming a supervisor after the ICCS program, because I think my knowledge is not just knowledge, but I think what comes from that, the implications, the after effects of that program have helped me feel more comfortable and confident in my coaching practice as well. So I think the supervision practice has improved how I am, probably, dare I say, as a person as well, because I'm not afraid of getting things wrong if I do get them wrong, and saying so and repairing afterwards. I'm more willing to experiment a little bit more as well, and perhaps with novice coaches, I'll be a bit more formative, normative, restorative, but with much more experience, we can expand the boundaries a little bit, test things out,
Mhm.
and see what happens, see what surfaces for us in that space. So yeah, that's great. I think it's improved me for sure.
You as a person. And what key qualities would you think are essential for effective coaching supervision?
So something that's not out of a textbook. There we go. What can I use? So I mean, the obvious ones are going to be like, you've got to offer uh, work towards a safe space. So because you need trust.
Mm,
So the method, the environment's got to feel warm. So I feel quite safe, non-judgmental, um, somewhat professional in the way that you conduct your service. If you're supervising, I still use sort of an agenda. I sort of say, we're here today to talk about, we're here for so long. That's what, even mentioning a contract, just sort of offering that it's familiar, it's safe. And the clients know that. I think it's important to have that familiarity, that of the terrain that you're going to cover. And I think it's recognizing that we all have a growing edge, is the word. That edge. We don't know it all. There's always an edge at which we're unsure, maybe untested. And I think that's that bit both that I need to stretch and my clients as well. They're needing to stretch. What's their growing edge? Because you never know it all. You're always learning. And I think is there an acknowledgement of that in the work is important as well, because there's nothing, things that were a definite in the past sometimes prove different in the future. So we just need to allow for that as well as we go. Yeah, I think, what else? I think with supervision, it's just the ability to step back from the work and view it as almost a separate entity. Oh, why did I do it like that? I wonder. Let me have a think about that. How did I feel different? What's going on there? Is there something I can learn from that? Is it telling me something? So all of the different kind of functions and just sort of, examining that.
Do you mean as a supervisor to step back, or to help the coach to step back from their session, or both?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think I was thinking as a supervisor, it allows me that, I don't know what you'd call it, like a helicopter view of something that's being described, whether we're talking about, I2, what were the interventions that were going on? Tell me about the interventions you're using. Or whether it's something, where you're developing a relationship with your client as a supervisor, with the supervisee, that helps them develop their internal supervisor. That's what I'm always working towards, is that almost noticing that curiosity internally when working as a coach, to go, what would my supervisor think of this, what I'm doing now? How might they advise? Why am I feeling a bit uncomfortable? Maybe it's something going on here. Is there a parallel process that I'm so far unaware of that is beginning to surface now? And I'm wondering, is something I'm going to take to supervision, or that's what I'm hoping to promote.
Yes. John, do you have some final words or advice for somebody, a coach, an experienced coach, considering to train as a supervisor?
Not really any big words of wisdom. No, I think what's accompanied me all the way through the different things, the different roles that I've done over the years is just, it's about being curious. And it just continues to be, my kind of motto is just be curious, just ask. If you're curious about something, about what's going on, what's being described, and you have a question, be curious, be bold with it and ask, find out, be respectful, of course, but be curious about that. Saying, help me understand what do you think was going on there? Or that's really fascinating. Tell me more. Just to be curious. And I think that's what's kept me company through the different things that I've done in life, for sure.
That curiosity that leads to growth, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Leads to growth.
Yeah. Always going to be difference and change. Yeah.
Thank you so much for
You're very welcome.
your journey as a supervisor, and it's been very insightful. And thank you so much for being.
No, good to see you, Andrea. All the best. Bye for now.